The Wisdom of Solomon, Hakmah, Chapter 9. O Elohim of my fathers, and Adon of kindness, who has made all by your word, and ordained man through your wisdom, that he should reign over the creatures which you have made, and order the world according to straightness and righteousness, and execute right ruling with an upright heart. Give me wisdom that sits by your throne, and do not reject me from among your children. For I, your servant and son of your female servant, am a weak man, and short-lived, and too young for the understanding of right ruling and laws. For though a man be ever so perfect among the children of men, yet if your wisdom is not with him, he shall be regarded as naught. You have chosen me to be a sovereign of your people, and a judge of your sons and daughters. You have commanded me to build a Haikal upon your Kodesh mountain, and an altar in the city in which you dwell, a resemblance of the Kodesh Mishkan, which you have prepared from the beginning. And wisdom was with you, who knows your works, and was present when you made the world, and knew what was acceptable in your sight, and right by your commands. O send her out of your Kodesh Shemayim, and from the throne of your esteem, that being present she may labor with me, that I may know what is pleasing to you. For she knows and understands all matters, and she shall lead me sensibly in my doings, and preserve me in her power. So shall my works be acceptable, and then shall I judge your people righteously, and be worthy to sit in my Father's seat. For what man is he who knows the counsel of Elohim, or who knows the desire of Yahuwah? For the thoughts of mortal men are wretched, and our plans are of uncertainty. For the corruptible body presses down the being, and this earthly tent weighs down the mind that thinks upon many matters. And we could hardly guess rightly at that which is on earth, and with labor we find that which is before us. But that which is in the Shemayim, who has searched out? And your counsel, who has known, except you give wisdom, and send your Ruach HaKodesh from above? For so the ways of those who lived on the earth were instructed. And men were taught that which is pleasing to you, and were saved through wisdom. Chapter 10. She preserved the first-formed father of the world, who was created alone, and brought him out from his fall, and gave him power to rule all creatures. But when the unrighteous went away from her in his wrath, he also perished in the fury with which he murdered his brother. For whose cause the earth being drowned with the flood, wisdom again preserved it, and directed the course of the righteous within a piece of wood of little value. And the nations being confounded in their wicked conspiracy, she found out the righteous, and preserved him blameless before Elohim, and kept him strong despite his tender compassion toward his son. When the wicked perished, she delivered the righteous man, who fled from the fire which fell down upon the 5 cities, or whose wickedness, the smoking wasteland, is a witness even to this day, and plants bearing fruit that never come to ripeness, and a standing pillar of salt is a monument of an unbelieving being. For not regarding wisdom, they not only received this evil, that they did not know that which was good, but also left behind them a remembrance to the world of their foolishness, so that the matters in which they sinned could not so much be as hidden. But wisdom delivered those who attended to her from pain. When the righteous fled from his brother's wrath, she guided him in right paths, and showed him the reign of Elohim, and gave him knowledge of Kodesh matters, made him wealthy in his travels, and multiplied the fruit of his labors. In the covetousness of those who oppressed him, she stood by him, and made him wealthy. She defended him from his enemies, and kept him safe from those that lay in wait. And in heavy conflict she gave him the deliverance, that he might know that good is stronger than all. When the righteous was sold, she did not forsake him, but delivered him from sin. She went down with him into the pit, and did not leave him in chains, till she brought him the scepter of the reign, and power against those who oppressed him. As for those who had accused him, she showed them to be liars, and gave him everlasting esteem. She delivered the righteous people and blameless seed from the nation that oppressed them. She entered into the being of the servant of Yahuwah, and withstood awesome sovereigns with wonders and signs, rendered to the righteous a reward for their labors, guided them in a marvelous way, and was a cover unto them by day, and a light by stars in the night time, brought them through the sea of reeds, and led them through deep waters. But she drowned their enemies, and threw them up from the depth of the sea. Therefore the righteous plundered the wicked, and praised your Kodesh name, O Yahuwah, and with one accord exalted your hand that fought for them. For wisdom opened the mouth of the dumb, and taught the tongues of those who could not speak. Chapter 11. She prospered their works in the hand of the Kodesh Nabi. They went through the wilderness that was uninhabited, and pitched tents in places where there lay no way. They stood against their enemies, and were avenged of their adversaries. When they were thirsty, they called upon you, and water was given them out of the flinty rock. And their thirst was quenched out of the solid rock. For in what matters their enemies were punished, by the same they in their need were benefited. For instead of a constant running river troubled with foul blood, for visible reproof of that a command, whereby the infants were slain, you gave to them abundance of water, by means of which they had no expectancy, revealing by that thirst at that time how you had punished their adversaries. For when they were tried, although chastised in kindness, they knew how the wicked were judged in wrath and torture, thirsting in a different manner than the righteous. For these you admonish and try as a father, but the other as a severe sovereign you condemn and punish. Whether they were absent or present, they were punished alike, for a double grief came upon them, and a groaning for the remembrance of what was past. For when they heard through their own punishments, the other had benefited. They sensed that it was from Yahuwah, for whom they treated with scorn, when he was sent out long before the throwing out of the infants. In the end, when they saw what came to be, they admired him. But for the foolish schemes of their wickedness, being deceived, they worship serpents empty of reason, and vile beasts. You sent a multitude of beastly creatures upon them for vengeance, that they might know that in all the ways a man sins, by the same he shall also be punished. For your almighty hand, that made the world of formless matter, did not lack the means to send a multitude of bears, or fierce lions among them, or newly created unknown wild beasts full of rage, breathing out either fiery breath or a filthy stench of billowing smoke, or shooting scorching sparks out of their eyes, from which not only the damage might kill them at once, but also the terrible sight utterly destroy them. And even without all these they might have collapsed with one blast, being punished by vengeance and scattered abroad through the breath of your power. But you have ordered all in measure, in number and weight, for you show your great power at all times when you desire, and who withstands the strength of your arm? For the whole world is like a small grain in the balance before you, even as a drop of the morning dew that falls down upon the earth. But you show favor upon all, for you do all, and overlook the sins of men, that they should repent. For you love all that exist, and loathe none whom you have made. For you would never have made any matter if you had hated it. And how could any matter have endured if it had not been your desire, or been preserved if not called by you? But you spare it all, for they are yours, O Yahuwah, you lover of the living. Chapter 12. For your incorruptible Ruach is in all. Therefore, little by little, you discipline those who offend, and warn them by keeping them in remembrance of that in which they have sinned, so that turning from their wickedness they believe on you, O Yahuwah. By the hands of our fathers you determined to destroy both those old inhabitants of your Kodesh land, whom you hated for doing the most abominable works of witchcraft and wicked slaughterings, and also those cruel murderers of children, and devourers of the flesh of man, and the feasts of blood, with their priests from among their idolatrous group, and the parents that killed helpless lives with their own hands, so that the land which you esteemed above all other might receive a worthy assembly of children of Elohim. Nevertheless, even those you spared, being but men, and sent hornets, forerunners of your host, to destroy them little by little. Now that you were unable to bring the wicked under the hand of the righteous in battle, or to destroy them at once with cruel beasts, or with one stern word, but executing your judgments upon them little by little, you gave them place for repentance, not being ignorant that they were a wicked generation, and that their evil was inherited, and that their minds could never be changed. For it was a cursed seed from the beginning. Neither for fear of any man did you pardon them for those matters in which they sinned. For who shall say, "What have you done?" Or who shall withstand your judgment? Or who shall accuse you for the nations that perish, whom you made? Or who shall come to stand against you, to be avenged for the unrighteous? For neither is there any Elohim, but you that looks after all, to whom you might show that your judgment is not unrighteous. Neither shall sovereign or ruler be able to turn his face against you, for any whom you have punished. Even as you yourself are righteous, you order all righteously, determining, if not agreeable within your power, to condemn he who does not deserve to be punished. For your power is the beginning of righteousness, and because you are Adon of all, it causes you to show favor to all. For when men shall not believe that you are all-powerful, you show your strength. And among those who know it, you make their boldness manifest. But you, mastering your power, rightly rule with straightness, and command us with great favor. For you determine when you use your power. But by such works you have taught your people that the righteous man should be kind, and have prepared your children with good expectancy, that you allow repentance for sins. For if you punish the enemies of your children, and those condemned to death, with such deliberation, giving them time and place, whereby they might be delivered from their evil, with what great discernment you rightly ruled your own children, unto whose fathers you have sworn, and made covenants of good promises. Therefore, whereas you discipline us, you scourge our enemies 1,000 times more, to the intent that, when we judge, we should carefully think of your goodness, and when we ourselves are judged, we should look for kindness. Wherefore, whereas men have lived corruptly and unrighteously, you have punished them with their own abominations, for they went very far astray in the ways of straying, and upheld for mighty ones the beasts which even among their enemies were despised, being deceived as children of no understanding, therefore unto them as children without the use of reason. You sent a judgment to mock them. But those who would not repent, by that correction in which he scolded them, shall feel a deserved judgment from Elohim. See, for what matters they grumbled when they were punished, that is, from those which they thought to be mighty ones. Being punished because of them, when they saw it, they acknowledged him to be the true Elohim, who before they refused to know, and therefore severe judgment came upon them. Chapter 13. Surely all men who are ignorant of Elohim are worthless by nature, and could not know him from the good which is seen. Neither by considering the works did they acknowledge the craftsman, but supposed either fire or wind or the swift air, or the circle of the stars or the raging water, or the lights of the Shemayim, to be the mighty ones which govern the world. If they, being delighted with their loveliness, took them to be mighty ones, let them know how much better their Adon is, for the first author of loveliness has created them. But if they were astonished at their power and excellence, Let them understand by them how much mightier he is that made them. For the greatness and loveliness of the creation is seen in proportion to the maker of them. But yet for this they are the less to be blamed. For perhaps they stray, seeking Elohim and desire to find him. For being accompanied with his works, they search him diligently, and believe their sight, because that which is seen is lovely. However, neither are they to be pardoned, for if they were able to know so much, that they could examine the world, how did they not sooner find out the adon of such? But they are miserable, and their expectancy is in dead objects, who call them mighty ones, which are the works of men's hands, gold and silver fashioned with skill and likeness of beasts, or a stone good for naught, the work of an aged hand. Now a carpenter that cuts timber after he has hewed down a tree suited for the purpose, and taken off all the bark round about with skill, and has fashioned it elegantly, and made a vessel from it fit for the service of man's life. And after using the remains of his work to prepare his food, has filled himself, and taking the very waste among that which served no use, being a crooked piece of wood and full of knots, has carved it diligently, when he had none else to do, and formed it by the skill of his knowledge, and fashioned it into the image of a man, or made it like some lowly beast, laying it over with scarlet, and with paint coloring it red, and covering every blemish with it. And when he has made a suitable space for it, positioned it on a wall, and fastened it with iron. For he prepared for it that it might not fall, knowing that it was unable to help itself. For it is an image, and has need of help. Then he makes a prayer for his possessions, for his wife and children, and is not ashamed to speak to that which has no life. For health he calls upon that which is weak. For life he prays to that which is dead. For help he humbly pleads that which has the least means to help. And for a good journey he asks of that which cannot put a foot forward. And for gaining and getting, and for good success of hands, ask ability to do from that which is most unable to do any deed. Chapter 14. Again, one preparing himself to sail, and about to pass through the raging waves, calls upon a piece of wood more rotten than the vessels that carry him. For truly this was planned by desire for gain, and the workman built it by his skill. But your providence, O Father, guides it, for you have made a path in the sea, and a safe way in the waves, showing that you save from every danger, even though a man went to sea without regard. Nevertheless, you do not want that the works of your wisdom should be idle. And therefore men committing their lives to a small piece of wood, and passing the rough sea in a weak vessel, are saved. For also in ages past, when the proud giants perished, the expectancy of the world governed by your hand escaped in a weak vessel, and left a seed of generation to all ages. For Baruch is the wood by which righteousness comes, but an idol made with hands is cursed, as well as he who made it. He, because he made it, and it, because, being corruptible, it was called a mighty one. For the wicked and his wickedness are alike, are both hateful to Elohim. For that which is made shall be punished together with he who made it. Therefore there shall even be a reckoning upon the idols of the Gentiles. For in the creation of Elohim they have become an abomination, and stumbling blocks to the beings of men, and a snare to the feet of the unwise. For the division of idols was the beginning of spiritual whoring. In the creation of them the corruption of life. For neither were they from the beginning, nor shall they be forever. For by the conceit of men they entered into the world, and therefore shall they come quickly to an end. For a father afflicted with untimely mourning, when he has made an image of his child soon taken away, now esteemed him as a mighty one, which was then a dead one, and delivered to those beneath him ceremonies and offerings. Thus over time an evil custom grew strong, being kept as a law. and graven images were worshipped by the commands of sovereigns, when men could not esteem in presence, because they dwelt far away. They took the likeness of his image from afar, and made an exact likeness of a sovereign whom they esteemed, so that through their ardor they might flatter he who was absent, as if he were present. The skill of the craftsman also helped to impel the ignorant to increase worship. For he, perhaps willing to please one in authority, forced all his skill to make the likeness in the best fashion. And so the multitude, attracted by the appeal of the work, accepted him now as a mighty one, who a little before was only esteemed. And this was an occasion to deceive the world, for men, serving either calamity or authority, ascribed unto stones and stocks the name not to be shared. And this was not enough for them, that they strayed in the knowledge of Elohim. But while they lived in the great struggle of ignorance, those great calamities they called shalom. For while they slew their children in offerings, or performed secret ceremonies, or held wild festivals of strange rituals, no longer did they keep lives nor marriages undefiled, but each one slew another in betrayal, or grieved him through adultery, so that there ruled in all men without exception blood, murder, theft, and hypocrisy, corruption, unbelief, confusion, falsehood, distress of good men, forgetfulness of good, defilement of beings, changing of kind, disorder in marriages, adultery, and shameless uncleanness. For the worshipping of idols not to be named is the beginning, the cause, and the end of all evil. For either they rave when they exalt, or prophesy lies, or live unrighteously, or else readily contradict themselves. For because their trust is in idols which have no life, though they swear falsely, yet they expect no harm. However, for both causes they shall be rightly punished, both because they did not think well of Elohim, giving heed to idols, and also unrighteously swore in deceit, despising Kodashah. For it is not the power of them by whom they swear, but it is the righteous vengeance of sinners that always punishes the offense of the wicked. Chapter 15. But you, O Elohim, showing favor in truth, patient, and ruling all in kindness. For if we sin, we are yours, knowing your power. But we shall not sin, knowing that we are considered yours. For to know you is perfect righteousness. Also to know your power is the root of immortality. For neither did the evil intention of men deceive us, nor an image spotted with various colors, the painter's fruitless labor, the sight of which entices fools to lust after it, and so they desire the form of a lifeless image that has no breath. Both those who make them, those who desire them, and those who worship them, are lovers of evil, and are worthy to have such to trust upon. For the potter, needing soft earth, fashions every vessel with which labor for our service. Indeed, of the same clay he makes both the vessels that serve for clean uses, and likewise also all those who serve the contrary. But to what is the use of either? The potter himself is the judge. And using his labors wickedly, he makes a vain mighty one of the same clay, even he which a little before was made of earth himself, and within a little while after returns to the same, when his life which was loaned to him shall be demanded. But his concern is not that he shall have much labor, nor that his life is short, but strives to outdo goldsmiths and silversmiths, and endeavors to do like the workers in bronze, and counts it his esteem to make that which is counterfeit. His heart is ashes, his expectancy is cheaper than dirt, and his life of less value than clay, because he did not know his Maker, and he who inspired into him an active being, and breathed in a living spirit. But they reckoned our life a game, and our time here a marketplace for gain. For they say, we must acquire every way, though it be by evil means. For this man of earthly matter knows he is stumbling above all else. making frail vessels and graven images, and all the enemies of your people that hold them in subjection are most foolish, and are more miserable than an infant. For they reckoned all the idols of the Gentiles to be mighty ones, which neither have the use of eyes to see, nor noses to draw breath, nor ears to hear, nor fingers or of hands to touch. And as for their feet, they are slow to move. For man made them, and he borrowed his own spirit, fashioned them. But no man makes a mighty one that is like himself, for being mortal, he makes that which is dead with wicked hands. For he himself is better than that which he worships, whereas he lived once, but they never. Also they worship those beasts that are also most hateful. For being compared together, some are worse than others, neither do they look good, so much as to be desired regarding beast. But they went without the praise of Elohim and his barakah. Chapter 16. Therefore by these they were rightly punished and tortured by a multitude of beasts. Instead of this punishment dealing favorably with your own people, you prepared for them delicacies for food, even quails, to arouse their appetite, so that they, desiring food, due to the ugly sight of the beasts sent among them, might loathe even that which they desired. But these, suffering a hardship for a short time, might be made partakers of delicacy. For it was necessary that upon those oppressors suffering should come, which they could not avoid, but to these it should only be shown how their enemies were punished. For when the fearful fierceness of beasts came upon them, and they perished with the stings of writhing serpents, your wrath did not endure forever. But they were troubled for a little while, that they might be warned, receiving a sign of deliverance to remind them of the command of your law. For he who turned himself toward it was not saved by that which he saw, but by you who are the Savior of all. And in this you made your enemies confess that it is you who delivers from all evil. For the biting of locusts and fleas killed them, neither was there found any healing for their life, but they deserved to be punished by such. But your sons were not overcome by the very fangs of venomous serpents. For your kindness was continually upon them and healed them, for they were pierced, that they should remember your words, and were quickly delivered, so not to fall into deep forgetfulness, that they remember your goodness. For it was neither herb nor poultice that healed them, but your word, O Yahuwah, that heals all. For you have power of life and death. You lead to the gates of Sheol and bring up again. Because of his evil a man kills, and the spirit, when it is gone, does not return. Neither the being that is taking up comes again. But it is impossible to escape your hand. For the wicked that denied to know you were beaten by the strength of your arm. They were pursued with strange rains, hail, and showers that they could not avoid, and they were consumed by fire. For the fire, which is most astounding, had more force in the water that quenches all. For the world fights for the righteous. For at one time the flame was restrained, that it might not consume the beasts that were sent against the wicked. But seeing this, they might see that they were punished with the judgment of Elohim. And at another time it burned stronger than fire, even in the midst of water, that it might destroy the increase of an unrighteous land. Instead, you fed your own people with food of messengers, and sent them bread from the Shemaim prepared without their labor, able to content every delight and pleasant to every taste. For your sustenance revealed your sweetness toward your children, and serving to the appetite of the eater, rendered itself to every man's liking. But snow and ice endured the fire without melting, that they might know that fire burning in the hail and flashing in the rain destroyed the increase of their enemies. But this again forgot even its own strength, that the righteous might be nourished. For the creation that serves you, the Maker, increases its strength against the unrighteous for their punishment, and diminishes its strength for the benefit of those who put their trust in you. Therefore, even then, when it changed into all forms, and was obedient to your favor, who sustains all according to the desire of those who need, that your children, O Yahuwah, whom you love, might know. That it is not the growing of crops that nourishes man, but that it is your word that preserves those who put their trust in you. For that which was not destroyed by the fire, being warmed with a few rays of sun, soon melted away. That it might be known that we must rise before the sun and give you thanks, and pray to you at the daybreak. For the expectancy of the unthankful shall melt away as the winter frost, and shall run away as useless water. Chapter 17. For your judgments are great and cannot be expressed. Therefore beings not instructed have strayed. For when unrighteous men thought to oppress the Kodesh nation, they, being shut up in their houses, the prisoners of darkness, and shackled in the bonds of a long night, lay exiled from the anticipation of eternity. For while they thought to lie hidden in their secret sins, they were scattered under a dark veil of forgetfulness, being greatly astonished and troubled with visions, for neither could the corner that held them keep them from fear, but noises falling down sounded about them, and mournful visions appeared to them with a heavy presence. No power of the fire could give them light, nor could the bright flames of the stars endure to lighten that horrible night. Only a very dreadful fire kindled by itself appeared to them, for being greatly afraid, they thought that which they saw to be worse than the sight they did not see. As for the illusions of magic, they were brought to naught, and their boasting in wisdom was reproved with shame. For those who promised to drive away fear and troubles from a sick being were sick themselves of fear, worthy to be laughed at. For though no fearsome matter frightened them, yet being scared of beasts that pass by, and hissing of serpents, they perished from fear, denying that they saw the air, which could in no way be avoided. For wickedness, condemned by her own witness, is very fearful, and being pressured by conscience, always foresees difficulties. For fear is not but a betrayal of the support which reason offers, and the expectation from within, being lesser, counts the ignorance greater than the cause which brings the torment. But they sleeping the same sleep that night, which was indeed unbearable, and which came upon them out of the imminent depths of Sheol, were on one hand tortured with fearsome visions, and on the other hand fainted, their heart failing them. For a sudden unexpected fear came upon them, so that whoever fell down there was thus kept, shut up in a prison without iron bars. For whether he were a farmer or shepherd or a laborer in the field, he was overtaken and endured that unavoidable necessity. For they were all bound with one chain of darkness, whether it were whistling wind or melodious noise of birds among the spreading branches, or a pleasant waterfall running forcefully, or a terrible sound of stones thrown down, or a stampeding of beasts that could not be seen, or a roaring voice of most savage wild beasts, or a rebounding echo from the hollow mountains. These made them faint for fear. For the whole world shone with radiant light, and none were hindered in their labor. Over them alone was spread a heavy night, an image of that darkness which would afterward receive them. But they were even more grievous unto themselves than the darkness. Chapter 18. Nevertheless, your Kodashim had a very great light, whose voice they heard, but did not see their shape. They also counted them Baruch, for they had not likewise suffered. And because of this, they did not harm those by whom they had been wronged before. They thanked them, and pleaded for their forgiveness that they had been enemies. Instead of this, you gave them a burning pillar of fire, both to be a guide for the unknown journey, and a harmless sun to comfort them in esteem. For they deserved to be deprived of light and imprisoned in darkness, who had kept your sons imprisoned, by whom the incorruptible light of the law was to be given unto the world. And when they had determined to slay the infants of the Kodashim, one child being thrown forth, but saved, to reprove them, you took away the multitude of their children, and destroyed them altogether in a mighty flood. Of that night our fathers were informed before, that knowing with certainty unto what promises they had trusted, they might afterwards be of good courage. So both the salvation of the righteous and destruction of their enemies was accepted by your people. For by which you punished our adversaries, by the same you esteemed us, whom you had called. For the righteous children of good men made offerings secretly, and with one accord made a Kodesh law, that the Kodeshim should likewise be partakers of the same, good and evil. The fathers now singing out the songs of praise. But on the other side was the sound of a despairing cry of the enemies, and a grievous noise was spread abroad for children, that were bewailed. The master and the servant were punished after one manner, and the sovereign suffered the same as the common person. So altogether they had innumerable dead with one kind of death, nor were the living sufficient to bury them. For in one moment the most noble of their offspring was destroyed. For although they would not believe by reason of their magic, upon the destruction of the firstborn they acknowledged these people to be the sons of Elohim. For while all was in quiet silence, and that night was in the midst of a swift course, your mighty word leaped out of the Shemaim from your royal throne, as a fierce man of battle into the midst of a land of destruction, and brought your sincere command as a sharp sword, and stood filling all with death, and it touched the Shemaim, but stood upon the earth. Then suddenly visions of horrible dreams troubled them greatly, and fears not sought for came upon them, and one thrown here, and another there half dead, revealed the cause of his death. For the dreams that troubled them forewarned this, lest they should perish, and not know why they were afflicted. Indeed, the taste of death touched the righteous also, and there was a destruction of the multitude in the wilderness. But the wrath did not endure long, for then a blameless man hurried, and stood forth to defend them, and bringing the shield of his own service. Even prayer, in the atonement of incense, opposed the wrath, and brought the calamity to an end, declaring that he was your servant. So he overcame the destroyer, not with strength of body, nor with force of arms, but with a word subdued he who punished, declaring the oaths and covenants made with the fathers. For when the dead had fallen down in heaps one upon another, standing between, he held back the wrath, and parted the way to the living. For in the long garment was the whole world, and in the 4 rows of the stones was engraved the esteem of the fathers, and your excellence upon the turban of his head. To these the destroyer yielded and feared, for it was enough that they only tasted the wrath. Chapter 19. As for the wicked, wrath came upon them without kindness to their end, for he knew before what they would do, how having allowed them to depart and sent them away in haste, they would reconsider and pursue them. For while they were still mourning and lamenting at the graves of the dead, they added another foolish scheme and pursued as fugitives those whom they had begged to leave. For the expectancy of which they were worthy drew them toward this end, and made them forget that which had already come to be, that they might feel the punishment of their torment which was lacking, and that your people might travel in an extraordinary way. But they would find a strange death, for the whole creation in its kind was renewed in fashion, serving your commands that were given to them, that your children might be guarded without harm, as a cloud overshadowing the camp, and where water stood before, dry land appeared, and out of the sea of reeds, an unobstructed way, and out of the raging river a green field, where all the people went through that were defended by your hand, seeing your marvelous awesome wonders. For they reared like horses and leaped like lambs, praising you, O Yahuwah, who had delivered them. For they still remembered what was done while they sojourned in the strange land, how the ground brought forth flies instead of cattle, and how the river threw up multitudes of frogs instead of fish. But afterwards they saw a new offspring of birds, when being led with their appetite, they asked for luxurious meats. For quails came up to them from the sea for their satisfaction, and punishments came upon the sinners. not without former signs of the power of thunder, for they suffered rightly according to their own wickedness. Because they exercised a harder and hateful behavior toward sojourners, for the Sodomites did not receive those who were unknown when they came. But these brought friends into slavery that deserved good from them. Not only so, but supposed some respect would be had of those, because they treated sojourners hatefully. But they afflicted those grievously whom they had received with feasting, and had already shared in the same laws with them. Therefore they were stricken with blindness, as those at the doors of the righteous man. When being surrounded with great horrible darkness, everyone sought to pass by his own doors. For the elements were changed in themselves by a kind of harmony, as notes change the name of the tune on a harp, and yet are always sounds, which are understood by the sight of that which has been done. For those of the earth were turned into watery, and that which before swam in the water, now moved on the earth. The fire had power in the water, forgetting its own ability, and the water forgets its own quenching nature. On the contrary, the flames did not destroy the flesh of the corruptible living matters, though they walked in them. Neither melted the frosty food from the Shemayim, that would naturally melt. For in all matters, O Yahuwah, you exalted your people and esteemed them. Neither did you lightly regard them, but assisted them at every time and place. And thus concludes the wisdom of Solomon.